Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, both here in person and our viewers online at home. This month we have the karakia up first, and Nikki has very kindly offered, who is our GM of People and Culture, to start us off with the karakia, and I will close the meeting with a prayer. When you're ready, Nikki.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings, greetings, greetings to you all. Let us begin today's meeting with the karakia, tima taka. This will assist us to clear our heads and hearts so we can focus on the essential work for which we're about to commence. As this is a mindfulness karakia, please feel free to be seated. Te kua, te wairua, kia riri, kia taumata. Haiara I ātou tātou mahi. Me tātou whi kia, tia kāka a rautou mā. Kia mau, kia ita, kia ori ai I kura, kia pupuri, kia whakamau. Kia taina, taina. Hui e, taiki e. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Nikki, and for anyone else, please be seated. Do we have any apologies today? Looks like everyone's here. Fantastic. Any declarations of conflicts of interest? Councillor Paul McPhail.
Just with Tussock Country, I manage a venue in town which has Tussock Country events in it. I'd just like to let everybody know that's what. I don't think it's a conflict, but I thought I'd better mention that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I am a trustee of Tussock Country, so I'm declaring that interest.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKenzie.
I do business with Tussock Country through advertising, etc., and do attend some of their meetings.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for that, councillors. Moving on to minutes of the meetings. For the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Gore District Council held on the Tuesday, 21st of March 2023. Did we have any questions for governance support on these minutes? Could I please have a mover that these minutes are true and correct? Councillor Dixon, and seconder Councillor Phillips. Any further comment? No, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? The motion is carried. Do we have any late urgent business? No, thank you, councillors. First up, we have a presentation from the New Zealand Country Music Festival Trust. I'd like to welcome both Jeff Ree and Julie Mitchell. Thank you for taking the time to present to us and letting us ask some questions. Jeff, if you would like to come up and take it away when you're ready.
Your Worship, the Mayor, Gore District Councillors, great to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to present in person this proposal today. As His Worship indicated, we have Julie Mitchell with me as well from the Tussock Country Trust Board, and also an apology from Kerry McLeod, another Trust Board member who was unable to make it due to some work commitments. So this afternoon we'd like to start off with a very short video. Maybe, Jess, I'm pressing the wrong button. my lovely assistant. Tassoc Country 2021. Just like to put maybe some context around the proposal today. The Bailey's Tassoc Country Music Festival Trust was formed in 2019 as an umbrella organisation, and the brand Bailey's Tassoc Country was born. We really run just 3 events as a trust ourselves. One is Top Paddock, which is a youth-orientated, young persons-orientated maybe country rock event in the Town and Country Club Stadium. The Tassoc Country Ute Muster, and new for 23 is a Tassoc Country Stage. Most of the other events are brands are managed by the partner organisations that collectively come under the Tassoc Country umbrella. And obviously we have the cornerstone event being the MLT New Zealand Gold Guitar Awards. The Country Music Club, Gore Country Music Club, is a significant partner in what's happened all the way back to 1974. So in those almost 50 years, what's happened, what was originally called Queen's Birthday Weekend, now King's Birthday Weekend, has turned into a 10-day festival. The Bailey's Tassoc Country Music Festival Trust, there are 8 wonderful volunteers who organise this. There's an estimated 544 hours of volunteer work annually. I hasten to point out that that's when there's no festival, as we've only had one out of our 3 years of duration. We've only had the one in 2021. When there is a festival, those volunteer hours rank close to 100,000 for pulling this off. The Trust currently holds one paid position, and that's of the marketing contractor at a $50,000 salary per annum at a 20 hours a week. And the position is currently kindly paid for by the Gore District Council. The proposal. So the Trust is seeking an extension of funding of the Council to continue the support and growth of the festival with financial stability. The extension of the funding on a sliding scale will continue to support Bailey's Tassoc Country Music Festival until the Trust is in a financial position that we can independently pay for this role. As I said earlier, with the pandemic, we've only managed 1 out of 3 years that we've actually run a full festival. Applying conservative growth forecasts, we propose that continued council support for an additional 3 years would mean that the festival would be in a position to promote and remunerate this role independently. We thought we would have been there by now, but COVID had other ideas. So the sliding scale of council support would look like this. Year 1, next year 100%, sliding year 2 75%, and year 3 50%, to years 4 and 5 no council support required. Without getting too bogged down in figures, if we look at year 2024, the cost of the position being $52,000. The cost to the council would be for that 100% for the first year of $52,000. Taking the profit, estimated profit from Tussock Country into the next year and compounding it, councils would drop their funding to 75% of that figure, to $39,000, and along further to Tussock Country Music Festival contribution would be $13,000. So as you start paying less, we start paying more. And the right-hand column, remaining profits, we still will be able to pull this off and be in the black after 2028, understanding that they're all projections. The growth rate of 10% is something that we think is doable, but there is a lot of volatility financially in our globe at the moment. 4 points. Tussock Country Music Festival achieves the level of profit that is forecast. The various long-term grants, sponsorships are maintained, and the current success rate of annual grants is also maintained. Number 3, TCMF continues to reach regular audiences, and new audiences are captured through digital marketing. Number 4, the maintained festival popularity means landmark events can potentially have a nominal increase in ticket price in the future. Numbers 2 and 3 are vital really to the support that we may have for the role of contract. If you go to the next slide, Jess. The long-term grants and sponsorships are maintained, and Tussock Country continues to reach the audiences as well as new audiences that are captured through digital marketing. And if we go to the next slide, they're very much tied closely to the marketing contractor's role. Without the role, the feasibility of the festival growth would be severely compromised. Short-term council support of the role curates a festival that ultimately employs and pays their own contractor. So what will this money support? Without this funding, really the role can't exist. The current version of Bailey's Tussock Country Music Festival creates significant economic benefit to the district. We've only had one. It was very successful, and with surveys done for that 2021 festival, it's a conservative estimate that we would have brought 1.7 million into the economy locally. If we think about the return on investment, the all-important ROI, as people would call it, council's investment into the event, the return is very, very significant. What would this funding mean to the district? It would help to ensure the festival continue to put national and international spotlights on Gore as New Zealand's home of country music. It will enable long-term continuation of a festival that owns and celebrates the unique charm, the character, the warm hospitality that make us who we are. We have created a brand for one of Southland's top 3 events, the other 2 being Waimumu Field Days and the Burt Munro Challenge. And I think I would also throw into the mix for Gore the Hokanui Fashion Design Awards. Fundamentally, we want to give our community a dynamic, exciting festival that residents and visitors look forward to both now and in the future. And I think it's safe to say that in the time that Tussock Country has been operating, we've started to change perceptions of what happens at King's Birthday weekend. Certainly in years gone by, there's been a perception that maybe people might leave town. But it's changing, and we're looking at trying to get people to stay and also not only be involved but participate. I think the tide is turning as the perceptions of what Tussock Country's done. It gives the district a second economic Christmas. And I would like to point to, we all know the sister city for Gore is Tamworth. And most of you will know Tamworth has had a very successful country music festival for a very long time. And this is a quote from Barry Harley, which I thought worth bringing to you today. And the festival does not make a profit for council, but creates another Christmas for those in the front line of retailers, accommodation, restaurants, etc. And the follow-on for others from the increased economy throughout the entire year. In Tamworth, the festival's 10 days equates to 20% of Tamworth's annual economy. which broadly means that more than 1 month, in some cases 2, trade is experienced in those 10 days of the Tamworth Country Music Festival. So maybe some questions for us would be, how do we build on the success? How do we fully quantify the festival's impact on our community and learn more from other festivals such as Tamworth or even the Art Deco Festival in the North Island? We as a board have been looking at ways to do a better job of quantifying what actually does come into the community during the Tussock Country Festival, and looking at the possibility down the line of purchasing, leasing software, infrastructure that could help us exactly quantify what's going on, and understanding too that that may be able to be utilised for the Hokanui Fashion Design Awards or the Burpin Row or other events that are here to really let us know really what significant impact these events are having. Thank you for your time today. That's all I need to say. Any questions that anybody would like to ask? We'll do our best to answer.
Thank you very much for that, Jeff. I don't know if you wanted Julie to come up as well, or no pressure. I find that 2 people answering questions is always easier than 1. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Stringer.
Hi, thanks guys for turning up, and that was very informative. What efforts over the past 3 years have been made to secure alternate funding for someone in this 20-year position? Have we come to a point where we need to look at putting this into, say, the annual plan or long-term plan for you guys that this funding carries through, and what happens after 3 years, say we don't get that income coming through to support that sliding scale effect?
Sure. I know you guys have got a lot of reading to do. There is some risk mitigation in those notes that we sent you, Councillor. We are constantly looking for ways to fund this festival. It's just what we do, you know, and I think there's a lot of unknowns going forward, even for this year, with the financial climate we find ourselves in nationally, you know. So we do what we can and put our best foot forward, and we'll see what happens this year. Going forward, a significant step this past, I guess, year has been the inclusion of Bailey's as a naming sponsor for a 3-year period. So that's been a huge boost to the festival. That's committed and that's guaranteed for 3 years. Constantly through the pandemic, there were funds that would pop up from government that would help events like us survive and continue with the long-term vision of our long-term vision is sustainability within our own coffers, absolutely. And we would have been there if we can judge the success of year 1. We would confidently say that we will be sustainable within our own ranks if we had 3 in a row. And I think looking forward, we still feel very, very comfortable that that would be the case.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McFarlane.
Yes, just through your worship for Jeff and Julie, thank you very much for a great presentation. Obviously highlights one of the assets that we do get here in Gore. Just in regard to the increase, the 15% margin that they work on for the increase each year, where does that come from? Is it, I didn't read it in the report, is it an industry standard? Because I know that with a number of events they've had around Southland and obviously Otago, they seem to have a much higher increase than that. There seems to be a great demand. Any discussion where the 15% comes, or could it be, it's obviously a moderate or a lower end figure for the numbers that you're expecting? Or is there a maximum that you'd go to?
We've taken a 10% as a base. We've also run the figures at 5% actually, growth, and it still makes sense for us as an entity to be sustainable at the end of that 3-year sliding scale. So we think 10% is a reasonably sound conservative growth estimate based on all the criteria that we could find, but we did run the figures at 5% as well and feel comfortable that that could still be achieved. Yeah.
Could I also add that I think if you look on the figures, Fanny, I'm sure you all know, the festival in 2021 had 31 events. Prior to that, when we were just running the Gold Guitar Awards and a few events around it, there were 6. This year there's just over 62 events planned for the town, so we feel quite confident with that growth.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? No? Thank you guys very much. We'll jump into a conversation around the recommendation.
Thank you for your time. We would like to pass out the presentations that you've seen today for you to digest, and also potentially, if you haven't been to any events at Tussock Country, feel free to try and experience that, and if necessary, we would be happy to reconvene August to give you some time to soak up what really is what the event's really about. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Can we get a round of applause for the presentation? Thank you very much. So the recommendation on the table is that the report be received and the funding request be considered. I just had one question before I ask for a mover and a seconder for staff. There was a comment in the presentation that the role has been paid for till December 2024. No, 2023. Okay, fantastic. So this would be for 2024, 2025 and 2026. Fantastic, thank you for that clarification. Did we have a mover that that report be received and that the funding request be considered? Councillor Stringer and seconded by Councillor McPhail. I will now open for debate, if there is any. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, it's not a debate, it's just congratulations. When I sit around this table, I have to be conscious about the money that we're spending on ratepayers' funds. It's limited, but I believe that what we're doing today would be is a great asset, and it keeps the community well at heart, I think.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Dixon.
Yes, I also would like to thank Tussock Country for their presentation today. And I'd like to add too that it's a very good event because it covers all ages, which is really great for Gore. Young people can get out there right through to elderly. So yes, congratulations, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comment around the table? Councillor Gardine.
Yes, yeah, I think it's a very good presentation to us all, and no doubt we've all experienced Tussock Country, and I think it's something that the community does gain from, and I think it's one of the most positive ones I've seen with a presentation like that when it disappears in 3 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comment from around the table? No. I would tend to agree. I think the benefits outweigh the costs on this one, and as Councillor Gardine really very well put out, it's nice to see someone come to us with a sliding scale of how they're going to fund these sorts of roles themselves, so it's very impressive to see. If there's no further conversation, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Next up we have the notice of motion, point number 6 on page 58. Would the mover like to talk to the motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I would, both by way of introduction to it and providing, I guess, a personal perspective. I was elected to this council last year as a first-time councillor. I came in with lots of energy and enthusiasm, and I'm proud to be a councillor and to serve this community and hold the position of Deputy Mayor. My goal was to represent the people, and to make a positive difference to the day-to-day operations of the council. And I'll continue to do that to the best of my ability. But hanging over me is a cloud of sadness and of frustration. Sadness that we have an empty chair over here, where Brett Highstead, a councillor who served many years, served this community extremely well, and he will be missed. Frustration because of the unrelenting desire of the press and others to search out what they see as a good story. My work environment, and the environment of staff as well, I'm sure, is full of distractions and stress. I would much prefer the reporters who are here today to talk about the good things that make the Gore District what I consider the best provincial area in New Zealand. We don't have the extremes of what happened in the urban larger areas. What we do have, for example, is a library that's just been opened that is probably the most modern and innovative in the country. We have a museum edition recently put in that looks at the illicit whiskey that used to be dealt with in the hill, made in the hills. And we have our own still. We're the country music capital of New Zealand and the brown trout capital as well. A dysfunctional relationship between the Mayor and Chief Executive is not sustainable, and the detailed content of a meeting that was closed to the public appearing in the papers has questioned our trust of the people around us. We as elected representatives must come to terms with that, and we will. And we'll do that responsibly, taking into account our legal and moral obligations. Prior to the meeting of the 28th of March, we were not aware of the state of the relationship between the Mayor and the Chief Executive. At that meeting of 28 March, we took immediate steps to put in place a person to act as an intermediary between the two to help the situation. We recognised that as a short-term step. Collectively, following that meeting, councillors have determined that there is more to be done. We don't have amongst ourselves the necessary skill set to do that, the knowledge, etc. And for that reason, looking at having independent advice from a trained expert to guide us forward so that we can work on the things that we should be focusing on. I have not been involved in a review of this type in the past. I'm not too sure how long it would take, but I would hope that it can be done in a matter of several months. Who will provide that review has not yet been determined. We need to get these provisions through Council in the first place, and the exact matters that they will be looking at need to be dealt with in terms of terms of reference. The motion that I have entered into Council with a number of other councillors endorsing is in three parts. The first part deals with the appointment of an independent reviewer to lead us through that process. The second part is worded so that terms of reference are then drafted. Those exact terms will need to be worked through I guess, collectively, and councillors may wish to discuss how that is done. The third part is a commitment to the public and beyond that whatever comes out of the review is not going to be put on a shelf and left to get dust or put in a drawer, but we will act on it. It is a commitment from our part to show that we're prepared to move forward responsibly, both with regard to our legal and moral obligations. I therefore move that the three resolutions that are included in the agenda be put to for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Reid, would you like to speak, or would you like to speak to the motion?
I would, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you to the Deputy Mayor for the very erudite way he has presented that in a clear manner as well. But personally myself, I believe that I would be failing in my duty to the oath that I've sworn 3 times if I didn't support and commit to an independent review. So that is called for in the motion before us. I also believe that the councillors sitting around the table who have signed the recommendation in good faith understand completely their collective responsibility to the people of the Gore District, and they are very focused on continuing sound governance. I say that very slowly so you get my drift. But I would also like to make comment on the fact that another thing that actually is quite a welcome thing to see, the swift affirmation of the Chief Executive and more recently the Mayor to also report and support this review. And I think that's a very welcome thing. So thank you both.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you both for those words. I will now open the floor to any further comment by councillors on the motion. Councillor Mackenzie.
Personally, I didn't sign the agreement. At the time, I felt I was being rushed a little bit, but I have no objection to it at all. So I'd just like to add that comment in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Richard McPhail.
Yes, through your worship and through to the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Reid there, they've obviously covered off what the majority of the councillors probably feel in regard to why we're actually sitting here today and having to address this issue. We fall back onto the principles of why we were elected: trust, respect, honesty, confidence. Plus, we have to be accountable. And we've been in the position now where we probably need to be accountable to our community. I think our principles have probably been tried. So the fabric of what we base ourselves on needs to be addressed. So I totally support the review, and also the fact of what the Deputy Mayor has said. It has to be transparent, doesn't need to be put on a shelf, and we need to show the community that we actually are a person or persons that can be trusted to give good, sound and proper governance without risk of leaks or other matters happening that bring our council into disrepute.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comment? The only two comments that I'd have is first of all, I was never given the opportunity to sign this notice of motion, but I am in support of review. I think that we can always do better as a council, and I take on board all the comments of the councillors here today. I think it's very appropriate that we do fall back on the reason that we were elected and make sure that we are serving the community to the best of our ability. The only other comment I had, and I know it's been moved in second, is I just note the recommendation that the Gore District Council seek an independent review, that the draft of the terms of reference for the review be prepared for consideration. Are we all comfortable with staff undertaking that role? It is regular procedure for staff to undertake that role. I know that Councillor Hovell mentioned that it would be in combination. Do we need to put that in the recommendation, or are we comfortable with staff carrying out that review? Councillor Gardine.
Staff will prepare the terms of reference, but it still has to come to council for ratification. So that will happen in May, and so we can still debate the terms of reference.
Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I'm more than comfortable with the staff making the review to bring to council. Thanks.
Thank you, councillors. Is there any more discussion on this notice of motion? There is not. I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? The motion has been carried. Thank you, councillors. Now we have the Gore District Council recycling update. Did the report writer Jason want to speak to this report at all?
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. I'll take the report as read. The only thing I'll just sort of state is this is probably not the report that councillors were expecting to receive at this meeting. The last meeting we talked about providing costs for council to consider. In light of the announcements in this report, staff have decided to delay that report mainly for a couple of reasons, but a significant one being that through the announcements made by the government 3 weeks ago around waste minimisation, there is an opportunity that exists now through funding support that was considerably narrower a month ago than it is now. As a result of that, staff believe that it would be remiss if we didn't take that opportunity to have discussions with the Ministry for the Environment about what opportunities exist to offset some of the costs we're looking at in terms of our reintroduced recycling program. And hopefully through that we can make some further savings that won't then fall on our ratepayers, but there for councils throughout the country to lift the game around recycling and hopefully get back in as soon as possible a wider recycling scheme for the residents of the Gore District. So happy to take any further questions or comments.
Thank you for that, Jason. Did we have a question for the report writer? Councillor McKenzie.
Jason, I'd just say no matter what funding is available, etc., we could possibly do some sort of costing anyway and find out like basic things like the cost of bins. Say we need 3 or something like that along those lines, subject to whatever funding is available. Your thoughts, please. Thank you.
Through Your Worship, yep, absolutely. We can provide costs, but I think one thing that we want to do is make sure that those costs that we are providing are accurate. Once we put numbers out, they are out there for everybody, and we want to make sure that we're not creating, I guess, or misleading not only our communities but also elected members in terms of what the actual costs of reintroducing recycling are. I certainly want to make sure that the information I'm providing to council is as accurate as it can be, and so the preference is to ensure that we look at all avenues to offset any costs that we can for our communities around the reintroduction of those. And the only other thing I'd just add to that is that through these discussions there may be something that we bring back to council in terms of the options report that they have seen previously that is a change. I certainly already, having had discussions around it, the proposal to look at supporting home composting, some of the changes through the government announcements may mean that that's not the best road for us to go down in the short term anymore. So there's things like that we want to ensure that we have a full package of what the overall activity too of recycling costs, not just adding a third bin or what the cost is to get back into a Recycling South contract, etc. So we want to make sure that we've got the full gambit of those costs.
Thank you for that. Councillor Stringer and then Councillor Havel.
Through his worship to Jason, have we been given all the facts and figures from government on what's happening, or is this a slow release of information coming, and is it likely to change come October when we have an election?
Through you, Your Worship, I think you'll see bullet point 4 in 2.3 of the report talks about new and more comprehensive waste legislation, so that is still a work in progress. The document that's been provided by the government outside of the waste strategy is a guidance document, so there still will be more to come. But as the report outlines, I don't think the proposed direction from council deviates too much because of the announcements, but again, we just want to make sure that we take the opportunity to review those and make correct decisions that inform our community.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Just further to that from Jason, and to answer your question, Councillor Stringer, I don't think, unlike Three Waters, this particular strategy is vulnerable to a change of government. I think my understanding, both governments would be wanting to see waste minimisation, lowering our carbon footprint. To me, it makes a lot of sense for both sides of the political divide, and therefore, unlike Three Waters, where there could well be a change, this is probably the general direction where the country will be heading in the future.
Councillor Hovell, and then Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. The council does not operate in isolation when it comes to waste. We're part of the wider network with WasteNet, working with the other territorials, and I guess there's some overview required by WasteNet, and I'm wearing my hat now as the chairperson of WasteNet, in terms of there are some economies of scale to be gained acting as a region rather than acting independently, and there's also, I guess, some synergies to be gained by actually looking at our relationship with adjoining councils and how we can work in with them. So I guess the question that I've got is that in terms of moving forward, how does Jason see the relationship of council working in with WasteNet of actually progressing this in a timely way?
Through you, Your Worship. Good question. 3 weeks since the announcements, that will be something we need to work through alongside our other partners within WasteNet. But again, I think the direction that has been proposed and discussed around the council table already aligns with where the government's heading, and that was the purpose of the work that we'd done with Dr. Nikki Bold last year in terms of starting to re-establish and reset where we're heading with waste minimisation. But we do, Councillor Hovell, have an opportunity to again look at how we work together across the WasteNet organisation, and again look for any efficiencies that we can through that process to work together as part of any refinement. But that will be part of the picture also, but it shouldn't be something that delays where we're trying to go as a council.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Worship. I just think it's really good to see that the government is putting some funding into education, because consumer demand can actually drive some of these businesses to think differently, and it will be good for our council having that support from government, I feel.
Thank you, Councillor. Still doing questions to Jason before we get into the debate. Sorry for being procedural. Councillor Reid, did you have a question or?
I did, thank you, for Jason. Two things. One thing first, thank you again for your report. And also like to acknowledge the members of the community who are quite passionate recyclers who worked alongside Dr. Bold and yourself to get us to where we are. The one question I would have is regarding the government support. Would that enable us to employ the waste minimisation officer, or is that out of what they see as a positive move?
Through you, Your Worship, that may be a stretch. I would suspect that then every other council across the country might also be looking for some funding support for positions, or new positions in particular. But certainly, look, we have some meetings lined up with Ministry for the Environment, and then just wait for the lights to come back. Excellent. We have meetings lined up with the Ministry of Environment over the next week, both in terms of the Waste Minimisation Fund and the Glass Packaging Forum. So hopefully, we'll ensure we discuss all avenues in terms of where Gore's likely to be heading with recycling, and any opportunities we can to minimise the cost for our ratepayers.
Any further questions for Jason on this report? I guess I just had one question there, Jason. I recognise that this legislation's only come out 3 weeks ago, and we're still processing it. Given that the community is waiting for recycling to happen, are we able to give kind of a time frame as to when those costs might come? Are they part of the annual plan workshop upcoming, or what's our time frame looking like?
Through your worship, I think absolutely that's still the, at this point, that is the desire of staff, is to have that part of the annual plan discussion, which will be occurring over the next month. And I guess the question will be around the timing of funding and when we can then press the go button. So it may mean that we have a delay, because we certainly don't want to, those funds are generally not able to be extracted retrospectively. So again, hopefully by the time we come back and discuss this at the next public meeting, then we will have an idea anyway of what a timeline may look like, which is again an important consideration for council moving forward.
Thank you, Jason. And so there's a report hopefully coming back to the next council meeting regarding this. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Any further questions? No. Could I please get a mover that the report be received and that the council request staff to further investigate and understand the full implications of the recent waste announcements, including any opportunities to seek external funding support for the options identified in the AHINA consulting reports? Councillor Hovell is the mover and the seconder is Councillor McDonnell. Do we have any further debate? Councillor McPhail.
I know I sound, just through your worship, it's more of a statement. I sound like a stuck record, but and I think Jason alluded to it, to make sure that even though we've got the government project or strategy sitting here, that it does dovetail in with what we already have existing in our small town, and don't go and stand on the little boys with the big boys coming through. We do have some great recycling going on, and I'd make sure that they are still well and truly in our picture.
Thank you, Councillor. And to add a bit more of a point to that, I think this strategy gives us an opportunity to do it right, do it once and do it right in line with central government and councils around the company. So I think we're in and I think we're in a unique position to do that. So I guess positives and what some councils may find negatives. Was there any further comment? No, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Next, we have the Chief Executive Appraisal Committee. Draft terms of reference. Did the Chief Executive want to comment on this at all? No?
Pretty straightforward, Your Worship.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions for the report writer? Councillor Stringer.
Through His Worship, I'm just wanting a bit of clarity around the procedural order here, because I understand it's come out of stuff that was said in committee, but we haven't ratified those committee minutes yet. Does this have to go into committee and then we ratify the committee minutes and then it can go through, or can we pass this without those minutes being ratified as true and correct before we do it? Sorry, just nitpicking.
Extremely good question. So not nitpicking at all. Look, I guess if the council collectively is satisfied that the resolution that has been presented before you is correct, then it is entitled then to move on to approve in terms of reference.
Do we have any further questions for the Chief Executive? Could I please have a mover that the council endorse and adopt the attached terms of reference of the Chief Executive Appraisal Committee? Councillor Reid and seconded by Councillor Phillips. I will now open the floor for conversation or debate. Did we have anyone who wants to speak? Okay, all pretty straightforward it seems. I just wanted to make the council aware that despite the recommendation coming from the resolution coming from the extraordinary meeting, I note that in accordance with Schedule 7, Part 1, Clause 31(1) of the Local Government Act, the council removed the mayor from the Chief Executive Appraisal Committee. Can't actually do that. Under Section 41A(5) of the Local Government Act 2002, it states that a mayor is a member of each committee of a territorial authority. So while I can be removed, I'm still technically a member of that committee, as I am a member for all of those committees. Is that understood by councillors? Councillor McPhail.
I think in the best interests of what we've got here is probably include that in the minutes. Obviously it's something that's been introduced and hasn't been discussed with any of the chairs or otherwise, so note in the minutes and we move forward from there unless there's any debate around me.
Any debate? Chief Executive.
If I can assist the council, Your Worship, that particular point was traversed with council's lawyer verbally and confirmed that the mayor can be removed from a committee. But what we can do, if you wish, we can get a written opinion to confirm that position or otherwise.
Thank you for that, Chief Executive. Yes, that would be appreciated, some clarity on that. As my understanding is a section of the Act takes precedence over a clause in the schedule and that if mayors could be removed, it would be written in that way. Councillor McPhail.
Just to Your Worship, do you wish to remain on the committee?
By virtue of the Act, Councillor, I am still on the committee.
The question is, for Your Worship, do you wish to remain there or do you wish to remove yourself?
Whether I wish to remove myself or stay on, I'm by virtue a member of that committee regardless. Any further comments? Councillor McPhail.
Just through Your Worship to the CEO, obviously the request would be for a written opinion then in regard to that, and I'd like to pass a motion from the floor and seek a seconder in regard to requesting a written legal opinion in regard to you remaining, His Worship remaining on the committee, and yes, a legal written opinion in regard to the mayor remaining on the committee for the Gore CEO. Sorry, I might have to have that read back to me. I'll seek a seconder.
We've got a motion on the table as it sits. I'm more than happy for you to put that motion next, but there is a motion on the table at the moment. So it's just discussing the motions on the table, which is that the council endorse and adopt the terms of reference of the Chief Executive Appraisal Committee. We have no further discussion on that. Do we want to put that motion? Cool. All those in favour, please say aye. And against? Motion is carried. Now there's a motion on the floor from Councillor McPhail, which is to seek a written legal advice. Councillor, speak.
Just through Your Worship, just to clarify, the last motion that's been passed has been passed indicating they wish that you are removed from the committee.
By virtue of the Act, I'm still on the committee. So I think it's worth we seek legal advice for clarification on this one, if councillors feel uncomfortable. Otherwise, it's just hearsay between us.
Just through your worship, it's just I'm a bit askew that we're actually voting on something that can't occur. You've indicated that it can't occur, and I'd seek some advice from the CEO. Is it appropriate for us to vote on that?
Through your worship, you're voting on a terms of reference which has membership, and the membership, as per the terms of reference, does not include the Mayor. The Mayor has asserted that he believes he is still on that committee by virtue of section 41A. I've said that, and I acknowledge that there's 41A, but also there's specific provisions for the council to remove members of committees in the schedules, and I've covered that off verbally with council's public law lawyer, and so by approving this terms of reference, it doesn't preclude it doesn't actually stop the committee from moving forward. What it has created is a challenge about whether the Mayor should or can be removed from the committee, and we'll get that written advice and come back to the next council with clarity.
Thank you for that, Chief Executive. Just for clarification also, in that extraordinary meeting where I was not present, you have already passed the resolution under that schedule. So I've already been removed, but my argument was that I in fact can't be, but we will have the written statement to clarify that. Are you still happy to move that motion that we get a written statement?
Yes, no, thank you, Worship and CEO. Yeah, I would like to table the motion in regard to a written legal opinion in relation to the clauses that you've cited around the fact we cannot have you removed from a standing committee. I seek a seconder.
Can I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Cool. Would you like to comment on it at all, Councillor Phillips?
No, I'd just like to make clarification so then we can make some comment. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Is there any further discussion on that motion? I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. And against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Number 9, draft terms of reference for the Chief Executive intermediary. Did the Chief Executive want to comment on this draft? No. Were there any questions for the Chief Executive on this? Councillor McKenzie.
Being a newbie, I'd like to ask the question, reviews etc. in here, CAO as stated, the review may be costing more than what any money could be saved etc. in some of these things, but I believe that we actually need to see those figures for council to make decisions on things. How much does a review cost in any particular thing? Sorry, Councillor, I think you've jumped forward. I apologise. We're on point 9, draft terms of reference for the Chief Executive intermediary. That's okay, Councillor. I'll retract that. Did we have any questions for the Chief Executive on the intermediary terms of reference? Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Worship. I just have one question in the function of the dedicated intermediary role. Bullet point 6 is authorising the approval of the Chief Executive's credit card statements and annual leave. Just for protection for the person authorising, is there another person who authorises before that? So
Staff member.
Someone from staff or management that authorises the payments. I'm not questioning it, I'm just thinking to protect the intermediary role.
Through your worship, yes, it comes ultimately, the payments and the verification ultimately is from the General Manager Corporate Support. Basically the rules around credit card statements is that someone higher above you in the chain should authorise your credit card statement.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Sorry, just before I let you jump in, Councillor, I'd just like some clarification on that point as well, if you could. So I've read the sensitive expenditure policy. 1.4 states, in the case of people in the very senior positions of the principal approval by a more senior person, the one-up principal, should be applied to the maximum extent. In this case, of the chief executive, approval is required by the mayor and vice versa. Given that is in the policy, I just think that this then contradicts that policy. So does it? I'm confused on how this all works.
I think, Your Worship, given that it's a council resolution to appoint an intermediary, that just requires then, once this goes through, then we would adjust the sensitive expenditure policy to reflect current practice.
Thank you. No, Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, through His Worship. The final bullet point, being authorised signatory to legal documents, including those executed with the Council's common seal. Does the person taking that position have any extra liabilities or risks associated with them taking that position?
Through Your Worship, no, and the Council's delegation policy talks about under seal the Mayor or another elected member, and these documents invariably are executed in line with a Council resolution to enter into some sort of transaction.
Any further questions for the Chief Executive? No. Before we move into debate and I call for a seconder, I guess I'd like to understand from councillors what the intention of the intermediary was. There's points in here, so 1, 2 and 4, which all seem reasonable as an intermediary between to help communications. But points like 3, where the intermediary would attend the chair's role. We've had a chair's meeting. There's other elected members in the room. I don't understand why the intermediary would need to be there. As for providing a formal report, I guess I would be quite keen on getting some clarification on what that report would actually entail. What are we exactly reporting on? What would be expected from that report? I'm not too sure why the delegation of authorising / approving the Chief Executive credit card statements and annual leave is being stripped from me. It is something that I've always done on time and have never contested credit card statements or annual leave. And point 7, I also don't understand why the authorised signatory is being stripped off me. So I guess some clarification as to why those are being added in there, and I guess are they necessary in there, or is it more as an intermediary? Councillor Gardine.
This was discussed at the meeting, and it's more of an intermediary effect, and until we have the commission or the people look into what the governance of the council and what they recommend. So that's probably a 2 to 3 months period.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comment? Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was to do with mainly about making sure that myself as a councillor representing of the ratepayer of the district, that the functionality of council continues, and that's what it was all about. And until the review is taken, don't take anything into it as a grain of salt or a slide on yourself, none whatsoever. It's about the functionality of council. That's the main objective.
Any further, Councillor Reid?
I think this also reflects the fact that the relationship is broken down, and as councillors it is our duty to be responsible for the Chief Executive's well-being in this situation.
Councillor Reid, I don't see how approving legal documents on the council's behalf or attending chairs meeting is relevant to the chief executive's well-being.
I think...
Councillor Dixon.
Oh, just thank you, Worship. I was just wondering if the Chief Executive would like to respond to that.
Thank you. Yes, I would, because I'm conscious that the minutes, the discussion was held in committee, but the decisions were leaked, and the minutes, or large chunks of it, will be in the public domain. So the documents issue is that, unfortunately, there's been prolonged delays in having things signed off. And councillors will be aware of that. So that's why I wanted an intermediary to quickly be able to get things signed off and keep things moving. And this council has been really paralysed with trying to make any sort of progress over the last 6 months. So that's why, in part, that particular provision was sought to keep things moving in the council. And you know about the letters of representation to finalise our annual report that nearly resulted in having to get a fresh approval from this council.
I don't think any document that I have meant to assign has had to come back to council to be signed, so I don't see the need for it, but that is the council's decision. As for having the intermediary attend chairs meeting is not a chair, I'm baffled as to why that's been included. Councillor Havel.
Thank you, Your Worship. With regard to the latest point that you raised, having the intermediary at the chairs meeting was seen at the time as part of that intermediary role. Given that we've had our first chairs meeting and other senior staff have been present, I guess the question to the Chief Executive is, on the basis of the experience that we've had with one meeting, does that still need to be followed through as one of the duties of the intermediary?
Are you referring to the intermediary continuing to come to or going to the chairs meetings? Yes. Look, that's a point of, I think, of debate. I don't have a bottom line view on that. I think this is a new role, and the idea behind the intermediary coming to the chairs meetings so that there was a guaranteed method of feedback and inclusion of the intermediary, and so the mayor and chairs can hear from him on a regular basis. But on a personal view, I don't have a hard line view one way or the other.
Who had that?
Just noting Rex's hand up there.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, through you. Just further clarification around the role of the intermediary and the conversation that created or provided the opportunity for intermediaries. If I can please just remind the council that that was to the council and for the council and its ability to be a good employer. So the general purpose of the intermediary role and the functions associated with that role are with respect to the council being a good employer for the chief executive, as I think was raised by Councillor Reid. So I think it's in that light that, as had previously been discussed with you, that was one of the rationale for an intermediary being appointed and the functions of that intermediary to achieve or assist the council in being a good employer.
Thank you for that, Rex. Do we have any further comment? Councillor Gardine.
Through the Mayor, if the Chief Executive is not worried about the intermediary meeting with the chairs meeting, we could delete that item if councillors are agreed.
Councillor McPhail and then Councillor Havel.
Yes, just through your worship, obviously as the nominated person, the recommendation there, I'd have no issue not attending chairs meetings. I've been a chair, understand what's discussed there, and I'm sure that in the frank and professional discussions I have with you and the CEO, I'd have any relevant information given to me.
One other point I guess I just wanted to ask councillors for clarification. It says in point 2 that the intermediary is required to meet with both myself and the Deputy Mayor, whereas the intermediary is only just meeting with the Chief Executive. I have nothing against Keith being there, but does he need to be there as part of the discussions? I didn't think I need an intermediary and also my deputy there to receive information. Some of it may be timely as well. Just looking for clarification, nothing against the deputy. Councillor Hobell.
If I can help, that sentence starts off with and/or as required. So I would see that applying to me. It may well be some circumstances where the intermediary thinks that he should talk to both of us. Otherwise, I'm quite comfortable at his discretion as to whether he's talking direct to you or jointly.
Thank you for that clarification, councillor. Is there any further conversation on the terms of reference? Could I please have a mover that the council appoint Councillor Richard McPhail as the role of dedicated intermediary between the Chief Executive and the Mayor, and that the terms of reference for the role of the dedicated intermediary as attached be approved? Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Phillips. Do we have any further debate? I think there's been several people who have raised the point around the review. Given that there is no reference to timeframes in these terms of reference, are we able to put, I don't want to stricken Richard for the rest of his term to have to be the intermediary, are we able to put a date around the conclusion of the review as to when that intermediary may cease? Councillor Hobell.
That is the purpose of having bi-monthly reporting from the intermediary, and it may well be that one of his reports concludes with a recommendation that his role is no longer required. So rather than having a specific date there or trigger point, it was really setting it up so it was at his discretion. That was the intent.
Thank you for that clarification, councillor. Did we have any further comment? Councillor Gardine.
Do I have to put a recommendation that the the intermediary doesn't have to attend the chairs meeting?
We can. Are we happy to withdraw the motion and change it slightly? The mover.
It's just an amendment.
We can do an amendment, or we can withdraw it and then just change it slightly. Did you want to withdraw it, or should we go through the amendment process? Amendment process. Okay. Could I please have a mover that we strike point number 3? Councillor Gardine, seconded by Councillor Stringer. Do we have any conversation on the amendment? No, I will put the amendment. All those in favour, please say aye. And against? The amendment is carried. So the new recommendation is that the council appoint Richard McPhail as the intermediary, that the terms of reference of the dedicated intermediary are as reported, bar striking point number 3. Do we have any further conversation? I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. And against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Number 10, Service Delivery Review. Would the Chief Executive like to speak to the report?
Yeah, this report governs the 6-yearly obligation for the council to undertake a service delivery review of its main activities. This is a provision in the Local Government Act put in around about 2014 or 13 by the then government, and to be honest, it hasn't spawned a lot of revolutionary change. It has spawned a great feeding frenzy for consultants to come in and to review the services and generally land on the status quo, but give you a 40-page report and a decent invoice associated with it. When I say decent invoice, we're talking $30,000 to $40,000 a pop. I'm trying to avoid that because it just seems to me to be a waste of time. However, there are some parts that we do need to do a review, and roading is a specific provision because of the Waka Kotahi funding component that comes with that activity. Three Waters, as I said in my report, the government has already made up its mind and wants to reform that particular activity. And when you've had a recent competitive tendering process inside the last 2 years, you're exempt as well. It's important to note that this isn't a service level review. Key point. So that if elected members have a view that a particular service could be slimmed down, reduced in some way to save money, that's a different type of conversation that would come through your long-term plan and community engagement processes that are conducted as part of that exercise. So levels of service for all activities will be the subject of a separate workshop during the course of this year. So this is just really about how you deliver a service and whether it's in-house, whether it's contracting, a CCO, etc. And so my report really advances the proposition that a lot of these other services that we potentially have to do a service delivery review enjoy very high levels of satisfaction through your annual resident survey, and therefore I don't think I'd be very surprised if someone said, well, you should be contracting out your parks and reserves, for example, or putting your library in a trust, or throwing arts and heritage into a CCO. They're major steps, obviously, but there seems to be, in my perspective, a good level of comfort that the public particularly highly rate those services. So that's the way I've approached this, to try and minimise both the work but the cost involved to council to probably come up with the same answer that you've currently got in terms of how these services are delivered.
Thank you for that. Do we have any questions for the Chief Executive? Councillor McKenzie.
Through your worship, you've kind of answered the question that I had. It would be nice to see some numbers. So you're saying a review for any one of these particular sections would be around $30,000, give or take?
Yep.
Okay. It would be nice to see some figures there, as I admit I'm a newbie at this, but just to see some guideline of figures. But that was one of my main questions, around $30,000 for a review, to possibly come back and say, well, you're doing it right anyway. But it would be nice to have that option of looking, or say, you know, maybe we could trim a little bit here, or in the long term, that $30,000, if it was found a way of saving $10,000 a year or something, possibly it will be worth it. But I'd like to chuck that into the mix, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reid, did you?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question, Steve, about the roading review. And I know using your crystal ball, you probably won't, it's one of those, do you think our present level of subsidy will stay, or do you think it will decline, given the fact that Waka Kotahi is pretty lean at the moment with money?
Through your worship, yeah, look, the level of funding you get from Waka Kotahi is quite a complex formula they use, and it's based around capital values in your district. It's also, they have a floor so that no one can fall through it, so there's a bedrock minimum of funding that each council can be guaranteed. So over the last 20 years, Whakakatahi funding has gravitated around 55 to 59%. And I think it will be in that area still. Whakakatahi's funding is stretched, but it knows it has to maintain what it's got. But what you might find is that they are particularly challenged around new projects, and who knows what the effect of Cyclone Gabrielle will have in regard to its funding. And then, of course, you've got the ongoing effect of the electrification of vehicles and reducing revenue streams. But in the immediate future, I'd be surprised if it's outside that 55 to 59 window percent.
Councillor Stringer.
Thank you. Through His Worship, do we need to be using consultants for this? Is there any way we can do it in-house? Like over 6 years, if we picked one off a year and had someone dedicated to looking at in-house?
Through Your Worship, yes. Very hard. Two things. One is that it's quite a demanding process that the Act requires. Some councils can do it in-house when they've got policy analysts with experience. A lot of councils tend to farm it out because they believe they're getting a degree of objectivity into their thinking. Could we do it one a year? The answer would be yes, but you'd need to start starting from this year to work your way through the activity so that every 6 years you've actually ticked off each activity. We've just put this to sleep for 6 years. Suddenly 2023 has come around and we need to conduct all these reviews this year, if we choose to do so.
Any further questions of the Chief Executive? I guess I had one. The last time this review came up to be done, were consultants contracted then, or was it a similar process of just basically looking through and saying that we don't need to be reviewed?
No, there were consultants used for roading, Three Waters, and I'm pretty sure there's one other activity that was used. But some of these were the subject of, look, we don't need to go there. We're happy with what we've got, and we didn't actually commission reports. But the ones we did, off memory, were a reasonably sized fee at the end of it. And the important thing was that they were just recommending the status quo. In my personal view, there wasn't a lot of benefit deriving therefrom. And Councillor Mackenzie's point about maybe it might find some savings. Again, that's more like service delivery. And the model of Section 17A really steers you down a pathway of comparing different methods of delivering a service. So, for example, in-house versus CCO versus a shared service versus contracting out, for example.
So just for clarification, there are a number of these recommendations here that we would be signing up for not having done a proper review in almost 12 years. That's correct?
Yes, that's correct. Although Arts and Heritage has had the subject of, as I said in my report, memoranda of understanding that have been reviewed with the various trusts that operate in that precinct. Building control is the subject of a 2-yearly accreditation process which talks about or analyses how that service is delivered. But it's up to council. If the council really wants to see a review done, we can do it.
Do we have any further comments? Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sitting on the table as a councillor, I'm more than confident with the abilities of the staff and what's progressed to me as a councillor on what they do on a day-to-day basis. And I believe that we are definitely in a good ship, and the fact is that we have our in-house staff who have been with us for quite a long time. not only managerial staff but also on the ground staff. That is an indelible knowledge that this district needs to keep, and I believe if we went down the contractual position, as many councils around New Zealand will tell you, bear it in your own mind that it'll cost you a lot of money in the end, because everything that they do will cost you money. And yeah, I'm more than happy with what's happened over the last 6 years, and just congratulate the staff on their continued service to us.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor McNair.
I concur with Councillor Phillips. We're a very small council. We've got staff that are here dedicated in parks and reserves. Whether we think the level of service is a discussion for another format. So we're just looking at how we deliver it, whether it's contracted out. So I'm quite comfortable in the way we do things, and I do not want to spend money on consultants. So I'm very much in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comment? I guess I just wanted to circulate with councillors. I appreciate that conversation around the table is that we don't want to spend the money right now, and we have to do this year. There was a mention of rolling reviews after that, though, and whether there would be an appetite from councillors of lessening the burden so we don't get to 6 years in 6 years' time and we're staring down the barrel of 18 years without a review. Oh, have I done my maths there right? Yes, 18 years without a review. Councillor Hobel.
I do not support a revolving review on the matters that are dealt with in this report. To quickly go through them, Three Waters and Planning Services aren't required to be reviewed because of the legislative changes, and Planning Services was subject to competitive tender 2 years ago. Of the other ones, roading is underway, and that's quite appropriate, and it's a statutory requirement from the roading authorities. When you look at the other ones on the list, parks and reserves, can you imagine the issues that we would have if it was contracted out? By having it in-house, council has total control over what is done and what the cost is. And it would concern me if we went through an exercise of even approaching the spending type of money the Chief Executive's talking about to do it for that. Similarly for arts and heritage, it has been through a number of financial reviews and the like in recent years, and I can't see any benefit. Similarly, I imagine there would be a significant public outcry if this council was wanting to go into some sort of joint arrangement or contract out our library services. They're in the building next door to us. They're an integral part of what happens, and I see no benefit of that. Aquatics and the MLT Event Centre has a particular set of circumstances applying to it at present that requires the overview of council for financial reasons that I do not believe would be achievable through any other means other than the council retaining full control. And as noted, building control goes through a 2-yearly review. So I'm quite comfortable with the recommendation that is sitting in the report, and I'm happy to move the recommendations that are there as written.
Thank you for that. Before you would like to second that, Councillor? Or, okay, would you like to speak to the motion again as a seconder? No. I just wanted clarification around councillors that the consultant is for the review. The departments we're not handing them over to consultants. We got that? That's correct? Because it's written in the report under section 17A of the Local Government Act. It's a review of the cost effectiveness of the current arrangements. So it's whether we're doing, so even if it's in-house, it's whether we're being cost effective in our arrangements. We understand that? Councillor Stringer?
So does that highlight areas where we're under-investing as well? Okay.
No, it's primarily from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, around whether we are performing the service with a cost-effective lens over it. So whether we are performing those services to the most cost-effective way that we possibly can. Councillor Stringer.
Through His Worship, do we have to adopt anything out of that review, or is the review just put towards us, we accept it and go, well, we like the way things are and carry on?
We don't have to, so the report comes back, and as the Chief Executive very rightly pointed out, it can be common that it comes back status quo. My argument was just that it's been a very long time since we've had that review, so for it to come back status quo would, I don't know, would be a shock to me, but that's just my humble opinion. Are there any other comments? Councillor McPhail.
Yes, just through your worship, you refer to a review of 12 to 16 years ago, or 12 years ago. Do we know what it actually came back as? Across, do we have major issues?
Through your worship, no, not at all. All the reports we've done so far have just said pretty much the current method of service delivery, which is a notable bias towards in-house, is the way to go. And I do know that over the years, Parks and Reserves, to quote Councillor Hovell's example, other consultants working in this field say you've got the right model, and you can see it in your townships and your communities, and at the high level of finish and the care and the high regard that your staff have for their working environment. It shows through. So no, there's been no changes that I can recall that have come out of this process. The original mover of the legislative provision, the government of the day, might be disappointed, but that's the reality. And also, it's changing the way in which you deliver a service is a big step and does involve, cost to risk as well. And I'm reminded of just recently of a council not far from here almost putting out an SOS call to assist with a contract that's just not working for them. That's over the years, this council has not gone down the contracting path and decided not to scratch that itch, but overall reports that we have received have actually endorsed the status quo. And for those of you who are interested in roading, that's one where we do have a contracted service, and often it gets complaints about the services rendered. Not so much in more recent times, but that's an example of where once you lose an element of control, it's very hard to wrest it back.
Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Worship. I feel very confident in the staff managing this, and I think really we don't want to go putting extra pressures on people and doing reviews at this time, and it is a cost, and I think we have to be wary of that as well, with inflation costs and all the other costs coming upon us.
So second the motion.
And I second the motion. Oh.
And just for clarification, there's no appetite to instate there's 5 different ones that could be starting that review, so we don't get caught in this situation in 6 years' time, and there's no appetite to have that conversation. So we're signing up to quite a long time without any review. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Worship. As I said before, I feel confident in the fact that as a councillor sitting in around this table, that what gets presented to me is top-line stuff, and the confidence I have in the staff to do the job for me. And as the Chief Executive said, the reviews of the most common things that happen are the roading, and we had a review not very long ago about the cemeteries, and we got theirs tidied up, and so on. So if there is little wee tweaks that need to be done, it's brought to us by staff, and we can tidy them up. But can you imagine if we had dealings with the contractor, what we'd be dealing with? And I think, it's a lot more difficult. And I feel confident that what we're doing is okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any further conversation? Councillor Reid.
I'm very comfortable with both Councillor Hovell and Councillor Dixon's motion and seconding, and also the reinforcement of our staff.
Thank you, Councillor. For clarification, it was moved by Councillor Hovell and seconded by Councillor McDonnell. Any further conversation? That's right, Councillor. No, I will put the motion, which is, would the councillors, it's quite long, so I'll just put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. And against, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Local Government New Zealand Conference 2023. Seems pretty straightforward. Would you like to comment on this at all? No. Do we have a volunteer who would like to come with me to the conference? Oh.
Your Worship?
It is from the 26th to the 28th of July. So Wednesday the 26th to the 28th of July. Councillor Phillips.
Your Worship, I'm not volunteering as such, but it is a good opportunity for any new councillors that wish to go to meet and greet other councillors, see what other councils do, listen and learn, and it's a really good opportunity. So if you can spare the time to take that opportunity, please go.
If there's no councillors throwing up their hands, I just see that the community board chair has thrown up hers. Do the provisions state that we can take a community board chair, or
It's
purely up to...
It's purely council discretion, Your Worship.
Would there be a nomination in that capacity, if councillors are comfortable with it? Councillor Reid?
Sorry, nothing about the chair, but given that Councillor Hovell is in his first term as Deputy Mayor, if he would be willing to go in that situation, I think that would be a really good learning curve for him too.
Yeah, I've attended a couple of the zone meetings and in contact with other mayors, and I saw it as an opportunity, particularly for one of the new councillors, to have learnings from it. There's not many opportunities when the chair of the community board can attend things, and I think it'd be an excellent idea for her to go. She would probably get as much as anyone else.
Would you like to put a nomination forward in that capacity?
Does it require a nomination?
Oh, I think it's just, sorry, I think it's just recommendation. Yeah, that's fine. Councillor Richard McPhail.
No, I was just agreeing with the commentary regarding that if we haven't got a councillor that was prepared to attend, but just also with reference to the previous intermediary role, as long as we're sufficient that we can actually action that without the intermediary going, that would be quite good to see, and I'd actually recommend that that the chairperson of the community board, I'd definitely recommend that.
I'm sure we can have that conversation as part of the biannual reports as well that come to council. So the recommendation on the table, if we have a mover, would be that the council delegation to attend the 2023 Local Government New Zealand Conference in Christchurch, comprise of His Worship the Mayor, the Chief Executive and the Community Board Chair. Do we have a mover for that?
I'm happy to move that.
Councillor McPhail and a seconder, Councillor McDonnell. Do we have any further discussion? I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Number 12, James Cumming Community Centre and Library Development Project Update. Would the Chief Executive like to comment on this report?
Thanks, Your Worship. The project, as we know, obviously now is completed. There's obviously probably a few loose financial ends to come through, but the big, I guess, important news from the council's perspective is that the forecast final cost remains the same as it was last month, and there's still a little bit of contingency to deal with any last-minute loose ends. So overall, the project has gone very, very well.
Thank you for that. Do we have any comment from councillors? No. I will, the recommendation is that the report be received. Could I get a mover? Councillor Stringer, and a seconder, Councillor Gardion. Any further comment? I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Number 13, Great South Draft Statement of Intent. Would the Chief Executive or also Anne, if she feels the need, like to comment on this report?
Thanks, Your Worship. I think I'll let Anne, who's been waiting patiently in the wings, to speak to this. Obviously, the report is well written by me, has been also incorporates some of the thoughts that Anne had when she read the document as well.
I guess my main comments to you about our relationship with Great South is it's in very good condition. We have an excellent relationship with them. We are a very small funder as in comparison to the other councils, and the discretionary money is sitting at $60,000. Just to give you an example, in the last financial year, or the current financial year, we worked with Great South to do the fly fishing strategy. They also funded for us the Mandible Railway project, a strategic piece of work which was done to enable government funding. They've continued to provide support for events and work with not only our tourism team but our tourism operators, and some of them have had a fairly rugged time the last couple of years. In discussions around going forward, there in our Closing the Gaps program, there's quite a will with some of our big employers to work together in the attraction and retention market space, and that is a piece of work that Great South are intending doing, and we have flagged with them that we do want a bit of a Gore-centric approach, because we believe that just trying to sell Southland will not actually help us to the level in bringing people to Gore. We have a strong relationship with the Regional Business Partners program, and without going into the detail, but there's a whole lot of things on offer to businesses, and we've made our offices available here to Great South's team to come and meet with businesses. And now that the new library is available, they're going to base themselves regularly out of the library, both for drop-ins and regular appointments. So the figures, that is the baseline funding, is 150k, plus there's actually 2 years inflation. So the figure for this coming year is going to be sitting around 156,000 plus the 60k. I'm happy to answer any questions. I mean, there's so many bits and pieces of work that my team is doing with Great South and the wider teams of council. Yeah, so if you've got questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you for that, Anne, and I know you put a lot of hard work into this contract in particular. Do we have any questions for Anne? Councillor Gardion.
Just through the Mayor, Anne, we're, as a small township in Waikaka, Pukerau and Mandeville, very interested in getting fibre from those areas extended into that communities, and it's been quite a stumbling block. It's something we need to really push for.
Just last night, the Chief Executive from Great South and the Strategic Manager, Steve Kenny, were here in Gore for the energy strategy, and after that meeting I spoke to them again about the digital work they've been doing. There is a report that they're going to release in 2 weeks' time that is going to give us a lot more insights to places and spaces, and we have flagged that both the Chief Executive and I felt that their comments in the document perhaps needed to be reviewed and strengthened. So we're definitely flagging, and I believe Southland District is flagging that that's a key piece of work, because there is a lot of people in our district, especially in the farming community, that still don't have connectivity.
Just the comment is those schools, country schools have got it, and it's just a matter of getting the connection into the system at a reasonable price.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through you to Anne, I've noted that there's nothing about climate change or carbon neutral a future but it is that being left to Environment Southland to take care of? But are there strategies through Great South for each province on this?
They're still working in that space, and the energy strategy definitely covers off decarbonisation. So they're definitely still in that space. And I think part of the holding pattern we're in is waiting for beyond 2025 to come out, and there will be recommendations within that document as well. So both myself and other members of the team, Jason has also been sitting on some of the work streams around beyond 2025. So that work hasn't disappeared. Yeah.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just Anne, for you, a question around the attraction and retention of people to the district. I mean, currently we've got 11% of Southland's population in 2019 that were actually from a very wide, diverse intake of immigrants. And I know that it's probably increased since then. But the one thing I have noticed over time working with Great South is that Gore is often worked around. So I just wonder if you were able to give me any clarification around that going forward.
I guess the simple answer to that is that's why we're in discussions right now about making sure that there is a piece of work that's Gore-centric. Because if we just go to the market and tell a Southland story further up the country, it's not necessarily going to give the results for our really big employers. And our really big employers have flagged that they really want to come to the table and work with the Closing the Gaps team on this. And there's quite a diverse range of skills that they're looking for. But it also covers off when we do get people that come here, making sure, like through our Welcoming Communities program, that we've got the services to wrap around. If they're immigrants, it's actually making sure that it's easy to open a bank account, all of the things that actually become a real barrier. And I mean, Mark and I, we actually have dealt with things, some cases in the last few weeks where people have come and not had such a good experience, and then we're at risk of losing them. So there's a lot of work needs done in that space, but definitely we're asking for some Gore-centric focus.
Perfect, thank you. And I take on board what you're saying about working with the immigrants, because quite often the other side of the coin, they come, they feel not unwelcome, but they're out of their depth. That community contracts, and then it's harder for the next lot of people that come in too. So I think that's a very important part of work that you and Mark are both doing. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Councillor McPhail.
Yeah, just through your worship for Anne, obviously good work. Obviously aware of some of the projects that we've done over the years. Do you think we're sufficiently funded? Do you think the money we put in, we get the best bang for our buck?
Are you asking about our team? Are we sufficiently funded, or are you asking about Great South?
You can take it either way if you like.
I think for the money we put into Great South, I would say we've got more than our share. And I believe the reason we've got more than our share is because we work very closely with them, and we really try to support when they want to do something, whether it's with businesses here or bring programs to Gore. And we're very specific about what we ask them to bring, and it's needs-based. It's not just rolling out things because they're part of a package. So yeah, I think that we do very well for the amount of money we're putting into Great South.
No, thank you, Anne, for your honest answer. That's good to hear.
Thank you for that, Councillor, and I guess to build on that as well, just looking at the contract funding, we only put in $60,000 compared to the other two big funders of $600,000, so we do get quite a good bang for our buck on this deal. Do we have any further comment? Maybe just find the recommendation. So the recommendation is that the Council endorse the draft statement of intent for Great South in regard to the 2023-2024 with the addition of a more purposeful wording in relation to the digital connectivity, and that the council note that the community strategy manager will be working with Great South to develop particular initiatives that will benefit the Gore District directly. Do I have a mover? Councillor Dixon, seconded by Councillor Paul McPhail. Any further discussion? I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. And against, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. That brings us to the end of the public part of the meeting. We are going to have a 15-minute break